Okay, so if you've been with me so far, you will have seen that we went into the Abyss, we did 8 runs using the T1 Caracal fit, very basic, T1 modules galore, a couple of T2s in there. I think that makes it alpha friendly, alpha clone friendly, but ideally what you wanted to be doing, if you did manage to get into that Caracal, is upgrading to the T2 missiles and the T2 ballistic control um, systems, so that allowed you to apply more damage. Um, Once you've done that, you should be running them a lot quicker and skilling towards getting into the Hawk. Now this is my Hawk, for the basic Hawk that we use for T1 filaments. It's quicker than the Caracol. Um, it doesn't put out as much DPS on face value, but because the Caracol uses rapid lights that have a very long reload time, this used light missile launchers instead, so it does less DPS on face value, but the reload time is shorter and you can have more missiles in your launcher loaded ready to fire before you need to reload. So in essence, you end up having a higher DPS with this ship than you do with the Caracol. Um, it's faster, so you can speed tank better. I mean, I just did 8 runs there, and you're doing roughly 1300 meters a second, so you can get around the room quicker. But the only downside is that you have less EHP. So if we simulate this, we've got just shy of 6000 EHP. The Caracol has about 10,000 EHP. But because this is faster, you can speed tank a lot better. The resistances are naturally higher as well, which means that when you're activating your shield booster, you're actually getting more reps a second as well. One of the best things about this Hawk is the sheer speed that you can run these rooms, these T1 calm dark filaments in. I just did 8 there in about 70 minutes, and I will show you what I've managed to scoop up. Let's have a look here. So this is all of the loot if we ignore the missiles. That's a grand total of 55.5 million ISK for 70 minutes of work, and that's not including the value of these BPCs. Now this one's pretty much junk. I won't end up producing that. The market is saturated for those items, but this Entropic Radiation Sink Tech 1 blueprint, if you were to use this blueprint, it doesn't require a lot of materials whatsoever. 215,000 roughly, but you end up producing something that's worth 12 million. So that is a 12 million ISK BPC that is always worth producing. And as you can see here, I actually picked one up yesterday. That's ready for delivery and ready to be sold on the market. So if we count that as being 12 million, and we take those out of the equation, that's 55.5 plus 12 million, so that's 67 million ISK for 70 minutes of work. If you're a new player, you've skilled into this Hawk, and it'll take you roughly 30 to 40 days of skill points to get into it, unless you're using the kind of friend code that gives you like a million skill points, etc. You could probably get into this a lot sooner. You do need to be an Omega pilot to fly the Hawk, unfortunately. It is an Omega ship. If you're an Alpha pilot, you are probably looking to get into the Worm, and that's probably going to be one of my next videos that I'm going to do just for Alpha pilots. But this Hawk is brilliant. It's cap stable with my skill points. If you are not cap stable, all you do is cycle the shield booster just like you're doing on the Caracol. Over time you want to upgrade your capacitor skills and your shield booster skills to allow you to be cap stable in the long run. So how is this fit actually set out? So I'll show you how it's set out. Obviously I've got a skin on this Hawk, that's not how it normally looks. We have 4 light missile launchers in the high slots with an empty high slot. I just leave that empty, I don't put anything in it. We have 2 small acid cap batteries in the mid slots. We have 1 multi-spectrum shield hardener Tech 2 in the mid slot. We have a Tech 2 1 meganewton afterburner. You can upgrade that at a later date if you want to a officer or a faction, which will increase your speed, increase your speed tank in tandem. which makes it harder for you to hit, and it will use less capacitor as well if you go for the faction and offer some afterburner. And then we have a faction shield booster, which I decided to go with the domination shield booster. You can use whichever one you want. The reason why I went for the domination one over the Kaldari or the Federation one or the Dread Karista is that in MR right now it was the cheapest one, and they all did the same, so I went for that. It does do less HP per cycle in rep than the Tech 2 variant, but it uses less CPU and it cycles every 1.6 seconds instead of every 2 seconds. So what that does is, in the long run, gives you more HP per second in rep, more than the Tech 2 modules. So it's worth investing. It's only about 15 million ISK, so it's about 10 million more, 10 to 12 million more than the Tech 2 shield booster, but it's definitely worth it. And then in the low slots, we've got the two Tech 2 ballistic control systems that you should have skilled into by now if you've been running the Caracal. In terms of rigs, we have the small EM shield reinforcer Tech 2 and a small processor overclocking unit Tech 2, just to give you a bit of extra CPU so you can fit it. I have higher skills, so I'm able to fit this quite easily. If you are unable to fit this due to a lack of power grid or CPU, what you can do, this Tech 2 afterburner, drop that to the monopropellant afterburner, 1 meganewton monopropellant afterburner, and these ballistic control systems, swap them out for the Crosslink, which is the higher meta Tech 1 um, ballistic control system. That should allow you to then fly the Hawk with relative ease. You can go into the abyss and make an absolute fortune in doing so. It is quite pricey. It's well, let's take the loot out of the cargo for a second. Okay, so it's a bit pricier than the Caracal you were running before. That was about 22 million ISK. This one is 57.8 million ISK. If you're buying it from MR, you're probably going to end up paying about 70 million ISK, just because the MR market's a bit pricier. Um, yeah, it's wonderful. It runs really well, and I'm going to show you 8 runs in this ship when I go into Calm Dark Filaments. I only really get 2 difficult rooms. I get a Devoted Knight and I get a Jack of Arc, and it is not a problem for this whatsoever. Um, I just kited them, didn't receive much damage at all. It's a much easier ship to fly than the Caracal. Takes a lot less damage as well because of the speed tank, so I'd highly recommend getting into this and give it a try. You might die again, but if you've been following the footsteps that I've set out, I go into the Caracal first. You should have learnt a lot of these rooms now, and a lot of the ways that you've got to deal with the spawns inside them, um, and what to do with the difficult spawns. The Hawk is better at dealing with them than the Caracal.